Great.
Yes.
All right. So we've had some pretty amazing days, last couple of days of conversations. So what's been rolling through your noggins? What's some awareness? Anybody have any awarenesses or awakenings? I see Amy's got her hand up. We'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, anybody have any awarenesses or awakenings? Trying to run.
Can I go? Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me go to my notes real quick. This happened yesterday. Something that really woke me up yesterday was when Nano said yesterday, he said, excuses sound best from the person that's making them. And that's something that really hit me yesterday because that's actually is true. Because when we make up excuses about things, it's actually we're trying to make it sound good to ourselves. And then we end up accepting these excuses. And another thing that he said, excuses are tools of I can't even say the word. I'm sorry, y'all. It says it builds monuments of nothingness. It builds nothing. So by you saying these excuses, you're doing nothing but just holding yourself back. So that's what I wanted to say this morning.
And sometimes we get very good at that because we've had a lot of practice. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Amy, you've got your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good morning, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So actually, like I was thinking about the yesterday's call. It was a good call, and so my question was like, actually, I'm currently a trader. I am Mastery Academy, and I'm building my business too. So yesterday, like the question I had was like, what do I have to do to be more aware of my recipe, or to be more aware of what works for me?
So meditation will do that. Conversation, internal dialogue, journaling, but asking yourself some better questions. What is it that I love, right? And what is it that I do well? I'd ask some people around you that know you. What is it that you think I do well? What's a talent or skill that I do well? Then figure out how you can get rewarded for that talent or skill. So if it's being able to communicate with people, help people see things differently, help people learn things. If you can teach programs, meaning you can teach patterns and repetition to people, maybe you teach people how to think. So there's a skill or talent that you do innately. There's a skill or talent that you do without having to think about it, that everyone goes, man, you're just so good at fill in the blank. And then figure out how that allows you to present the solution called your business. Because that's all we do is we present solutions. We're not traders. You're not traders. I'm not a trader. I'm not in your company. I'm not a wellness guy. I'm not a 2 pill a day guy. I'm not an airport guy. I don't identify myself as anything that I do in business. I identify myself as everything I do in legacy. So you're not a trader, right? That's just that's a momentary description in time of what you do. So my goal in life is to be a better dad, better husband, period. So everything I do is based on that. So when you find your bigger reason, your bigger rocks, when you find those bigger rocks, it allows you to stay true to the big rocks no matter what you do, no matter what sand goes in there, what pebbles go in there, what water goes into your box, you've got your big rock. So I would define what your big rock is. When somebody asks you what you do, it should be, what do you do for the next 1,000 years? Right? If there's 2 times we die in the world, the day you pass, the day they bury you, and the last day they speak your name. So trading isn't going to keep your name alive. It might. Maybe you're going to become the world's greatest trader. Maybe you're going to become the next Warren Buffett. I don't know. But I would encourage you to find out What are you going to become, and what do you want to become, and what do you want to be known for 100 years from now, 50 years from now, 10 years from now? And when you identify that, the rest of this, you realize how much people are getting to leverage you instead of you getting to leverage them. They have it set up. It's called a marketing plan. It's like a resume. I've never seen anybody have a bad resume. I've seen bad resumes, but nobody's intentionally made a bad resume. Every company, no company has a bad marketing plan. They get you excited. And, you know, if you've ever watched The 300, did you ever see that movie, The 300, about the Spartans? The reason that I ask you that is because when they ask all of the people that the, hold on.
I'll come back for you. 1 second.
Hold on, let me
I'm
figure
okay.
out how to do this here.
1 second. They shall wait.
There we go. So when they ask all of the people that the Spartans are going to fight, they say, I'm a farmer, I'm a carpenter, I'm a this. And everybody was their title when they were in war. And when they asked the Spartans who they were, they said, we're warriors, we're Spartans. They didn't have another title at that particular moment. So when somebody asks you what you do, I would encourage you to have your legacy title, not your temporary title. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
Actually, it makes me think of, like, since I've been participating in this course, Morning is with Neno. Actually, I'm starting to figure out that it's not about compensation. It's all about like building people, like a business about people. So that's why I've learned like if this my aha moment, like I'm starting to realize that it's all about people, like helping people. But
Yeah, because
you.
nobody wants to be a trader. If they would, they wouldn't need us. They wouldn't need you. Nobody wants to do network marketing. They wouldn't need me. They wouldn't need you. Nobody wants to deliver Amazon, right? If they wouldn't have to, nobody would have to put out a need looking for apply now, right? So the reason that we have to invite people to come look at this business is because it's not an easy business. But it gets real easy when you have your legacy message versus your temporary message.
Okay. Makes sense.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Great question, Amit. I appreciate it.
Safe flight.
Awesome. Thank you, man. So, RBP, what am I hearing from you?
Right now, you're hearing me eat cereal.
Oh,
I
hold on.
It's really loud. You guys, if you haven't looked at your microphone, check and see if you're muted. I had an interesting Bible study last night, and I was going to get my notes, but I didn't know what you had planned this morning. So let me walk and get my notes. So we're studying in Bible study. We're studying Esther, but I had some really cool questions pop up from our Bible study. And when I'm sitting in Bible study, or when I'm sitting here listening to y'all or whatever, my brain is going in 17 different directions with questions. Hang on, I'll get back into the light, y'all. Give me a second. And it's interesting the things that come up. And what's peculiar is every time this call is almost over, it's like it gets even better. And it's the same thing with my Bible study. Every time it's almost over, it gets even better. So we're studying these about Queen Esther. And if you don't know the story, I'm going to encourage you to get the story. It's really a great piece of literature, not just a book in the Bible. It's very interesting. It's one of the books in the Bible. There's only 2 books in the Bible that never mention the word God, but it's implied, and it's one of them. And we were talking about timing, and some of the things I came up with is there's a part in Queen Esther to where she is trying to save her people, because there's this guy named Haman who is second in command in the whole kingdom. and he's trying to kill all the Jewish people. He hates them. He's trying to kill all the Jewish people. Well, Queen Esther happens to be Jewish, but the king doesn't know that she's Jewish. Neither does Haman. So it's an interesting twist. It's great literature. It's actually a really good book. So they have this banquet. The king holds this banquet, and he asked Queen Esther to attend. So she does. And of course, Haman, who is second in command, this guy who hates all the Jews, is there as well. And the king hasn't seen the queen for 30 days. So she's this beautiful, amazing woman, and he's smitten by her. And he hadn't seen her in 30 days. So when she walks in, he's like, "Ooh, there's my girl, there's my queen." And he walks up to her and he tells her, "Whatever you want, I'll give you half of my kingdom. Just tell me what you want." And she said, "I want to have a banquet for you in my quarters. Would you and Haman please come tomorrow?" And he said, "Absolutely, I'll do whatever you want me to do." You know, he's working, y'all. He's working for it, right? So he said, all right. So the next day comes, and he and Haman show up to her feast. And she, wines and dines them and serves them and honors them. And he said, "Okay, I've come to your banquet. Whatever you want. Like I said, I'll give you half my kingdom. I'll give you all this. Tell me what you want." She goes, "I want you to come back to another feast tomorrow here, and I want you to bring Haman." Now, remember, Haman hates Jews, but he doesn't know she's one. But she knows what he's up to. So they come back the next day, and she wines and dines and serves them and honors them. And it's very peculiar what happens here, because Queen Esther is in a position to where the king is totally smitten with her. He is head over heels. He's ready to give her back everything he possibly can, right? And Haman hates her people. Haman is ate up with pride and hatred. And so he has no clue what's going on. And they have a great dinner. They have a great meal. And it was shortly after that, and I'm not going to give all the story away. It was shortly after that Haman realized who Esther was, that she was a Jew. And he realized what she had set into place was she was going to be able to potentially save all her people, all the Jewish people. And when Haman realized the power the king gave to the queen, he flipped out and began to beg her for mercy. So I'm going to let you read the rest of the story, because it's a really interesting ending, what happened. But here's one of the questions. Somebody's got their mic on. Here's one of the questions that came up from that to me. And this is all about service. So I wrote down in my Bible study last night, can I serve people in high places without asking or accepting anything from them? And can I ask and accept from them as God instructs me? So there's been times in my life recently where I've been around people that are in quote unquote high places. And it's those moments where you think, oh, I can ask them this and this and this and this and this. Can I serve them just as much as I serve someone that I think is in the same position as myself? And can I wait to see what God has put them in my life for until he asks me to ask them for something or accept something from them? Can I receive something from them when he tells me to? It's an interesting twist. So let's keep going, though. There's a couple other questions. Am I pliable or movable enough so that when things change, they don't disrupt my whole thought process? I don't get blown out of the water as things change. These are just a few questions, and I'm sure Sean's brain is going 780 miles in a total different direction, which is why I'm doing this. And then here's the last thing. So let me finish this up just a little bit for you. So here's Haman, this guy, begging for mercy in front of Queen Esther. And Queen Esther now has a lot more power. But through this whole time, Queen Esther knew who Haman was, and she knew what he was up to. And yeah, I will, Angie, just a second. And she served him just like she served the king. So as I was walking out the door yesterday of this Bible study, and the Bible study leader and I were talking, my brain went to a whole different level. And this is the question that came out, and he said, get a pen, write it down now. I said, okay. So in all sense and purposes, Haman is her enemy. Are y'all following me? Haman's her enemy. Can you be so comfortable with the enemy so close and so near you without it driving you nuts that the enemy can remain there until God can completely sever that enemy off of you? Are y'all following me where this is going in my head? Sean, are you following me? Shake your head yes or no if you're hearing me. So this is really peculiar, because this is that place where you have to be super uncomfortable and okay being super uncomfortable, because for that uncomfortable spot to be right there and for you to be in it and to have either the enemy right there on top of you, and you need to read the whole story to make even more sense. Can you do that without losing your marbles long enough to hear what it is? My cat's destroying the room. To hear what it is that God needs to cut and remove from you so you can move on into your greatness. That's a deep question, y'all. I kind of took it a whole different place when Sean said, good morning, RVP. How you doing today? Well, there you go. So, Sean, hearing those questions and hearing my thoughts, where did your brain go?
Well, so Haman is our old story.
Yes.
Right? And it's with us all the time. And it's second in command. Sometimes it's first in command, right? Until we find our source, right? And the king wants to give us everything, right? So the king is God, and the king wants to give us everything. And we're the queens, we're the kings of our own ideas, we're the princes of our own thoughts. But Haman wants to kill anything that's new. So what is it? What's the old story that you're fighting for? What is the old story that you need to step into? Who do you need to serve? See, this is where I had some conversations yesterday, y'all. And when you all hear me take somebody through this process of, okay, take a big breath in, exhale, and say, and I love that, that's when you go into service. Love is only service. And so when you have a conversation with somebody, when you have a conversation with the old story, love it. It's got you here. It's put you in this place to become aware of. Imagine if we never had resistance. We'd be big bowls of jelly, right? We'd be these we'd be these big blobs of whatever it is that we can't move through society. We can't move because we have no resistance. We have nothing to strengthen us, right? The challenge is what you resist does persist. Just think about when you go to the gym and you go to do a bench press and you put 10 pounds on, you put 20 pounds on, you put 200 pounds on. As long as you're pushing that 200 pounds is there, it never gets any lighter. The weight doesn't change any weight. Your ability to deal with the weight is what changes. The ability to deal with the resistance of your old story means you have to deal with the old story. And how do you deal with the old story? You either fight it or you love it and it goes away, right? The resistance to it. Go ahead. I keep seeing you want to tap something.
Yeah, I was like, so there's interesting, I'm really going to encourage y'all to go read this story, because there's interesting twists that are part of Esther's old story. So let me set this up for culture. Back then in the Jewish culture, women before women, there was no premarital sex in the Jewish culture. No one had sex before marriage. And the women couldn't be with men because of that. So there's no sex there. And that was honorable. And it was one wife. And to set this up, here's the old story that Queen Esther had to do. And Sean will wrap this up in a bow beautifully. Queen Esther, when she was young, the king banished the first queen because of a drunken stupor, is basically what it was. And so he did this huge roundup in the kingdom where they rounded up every virgin in the kingdom to come before the king, and he would pick who he wanted as the queen. And what that means is every woman that came through, they took a year to prep these ladies, and every woman that the king got to see, he got to sleep with. Every one of them. Who knows how many? Dude had to be busy, had to be tired. Anyway, he got to sleep with every one of these women. So this woman, in God's plan for her story, in her old story, had to sleep with a man, a Jewish woman had to sleep with a man that's not her culture, and she had to do it against her own religious viewpoints, her own, you can't do that as a Jewish woman. And God allowed that to happen to get her to a place where she needed to go, to where she could thrive and step into that new story. That seems backwards to me. But that's why I like reading the Bible, because y'all, there's some stories you can't read out loud to kids in the Bible. They're like rated M for mature. And this is just part of one. But her old story encompasses something that was totally wrong to her, what she believed in and who she was. But it's so important because it's relatable to most people. Most people are going to have sex before they're married. And some people shame people for that. I'm just using this as a topic. Some people shame people for that. But most people are in that same boat. And God allowed this to happen to one woman and redeemed it and put her in a place where she could be in a place to save thousands and thousands, millions of people. And I thought, how interesting is that in this story, you have the old story, like Sean just talked about, as Haman. And then when you dissect the old story, what happened to Queen Esther and how it's being turned around and used to help millions of people in the story. But in 2020, the year 2020, it's going to help even more millions of people. And that's the power of your story. As you sit with your story, as you develop your story, as you are okay with your story, as you step into those moments and you go, there is no shame in my story. And what you think is shame is going to redeem millions of people. And it's going to set millions of people free. I got to walk through my story, y'all. I got to get some learning from some Sean G. Murphy now and understand how to embrace my story, because I don't know what millions of people are waiting on hearing this story to get some freedom. Does that make sense? That's just an interesting twist. You started talking about old stories, Sean. So this is a good book.
Well, the thing that you brought up is that Queen Esther, she had to tell somebody her story. She had to tell somebody she was Jewish. Somebody knew it. And then she didn't go brag about it. But once the story got found out, the next thing that happened is people were begging for mercy. So I don't know the story. I'm basing it based upon the language and the words you shared. So when people finally tell you, when you finally tell your story, I'm gonna pick on my little peanut Heather. When she finally tells her story, people are begging for mercy to hear her story. Give me the mercy, give me the blessing to be free myself. Give me mercy and grace. She did a live last night that was 33 minutes long. And she got emotional. She went on the roller coaster ride. She told her story. She told parts of the story. She told story so that people could give themselves mercy. See, when we ask for mercy, we're not asking you to give it to us. We're asking it to be given to us. We don't care where it comes from. When we ask for mercy, that's a selfish thing we're doing. When people tell your story and they say, thank you for telling your story, they say, that would inspired me. That's because it did it to them. It's because that's what they've been asking for. There's people who will hear my story and it'll never impact them. They could really care less because it's not what they were asking for. So when you realize the power you have, when people start to find out about your story, they hear the pain that you've walked through, the hell that you've been through, and it doesn't have to be. Listen, I'm hearing Michael in my head going, yeah, but I didn't have any pain. Well, you have the pain right now of trying to keep quiet that you've had a good life. That's your mercy that you're asking for. So all this to say, when you decide that you're going to save millions, you're going to save tens of millions, you're going to save hundreds of millions, it can't start until you know your story. And when you know your story, it'll start to come out. It'll just ooze out of you. It'll start to flow out of you. So just start to be aware of, because here's the thing we always say, right? Who you are speaks so loud, I don't need to hear what you're saying. Your story is always being presented. I'm gonna say this again. I know it's a technical thing, but when you all get on this call and you all come on camera, I'm going to encourage you to hold your phone up, because your story is, when you have the phone down here and you're talking to me like this, that is not a good story. Our brains have not rewired yet for you to talk down to me and me to have to look up to you. I'm just telling you, you may be comfortable with that. It's easier for you, because when you hold the phone like this, I got to look you in the eye. That's part of your story. If you're doing lives with people, if you're doing Zoom calls with people, and you don't have the phone up like this, you are not connecting with people. They can't hear your story. So I love this, how this went, because I don't know the story of Esther. I know I've heard the name before, but I didn't know the story. I mean, I recognized it as Rhonda was telling it. Then, so that brings up another question. How many of you start to recognize your story when you start to tell it? You go, you know, I've heard that before, and it's your own story. So sometimes we need to have somebody else help us tell our story. I help Rhonda tell her story. She helps me tell my story. I help people all around the world tell their story. I give them a different way to look at their own story, so that once they see their story, they can start to realize they can tell. A lot of times we've never been allowed to tell our own story. See, Esther didn't tell her own story. Somebody wrote it for her. Somebody wrote all this down. She played she played her part in her best she could, but she knew what her outcome was. She knew what her desire was. And so therefore, sometimes we got to go through the things that and things backwards turned out right. Maybe we need to look at our own life backwards. Maybe it'll turn out right.
Well, some of the other things from the story that we can apply to our lives, well, all of it, golly, it's all so good. But another question that hit me as you were talking, Sean, was Queen Esther didn't realize Haman was doing what he was doing as far as getting ready to wipe out a whole, do basically a genocide of individuals, until she finally paid attention to what was happening, and she was listening to other sources. So my question from that became, can y'all hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So my question for that became, who am I supposed to see that I'm not seeing? And that can go two different ways. Who am I supposed to be seeing that I'm not seeing? And people need to be noticed. All people need to be noticed, whether they're people that are going to support you or not support you. They need to be noticed. And then I ask myself, can I have eyes to see those God wants me to see, notice, and help? And those are three different things. If Queen Esther had never seen Haman for who he was and what he was, she'd never been able to potentially save millions of people and influence us today. No telling what would have happened. And if she hadn't realized and noticed how the king was acting and paying attention to her, she wouldn't have said, hang on a second, there's a timing to this. And if she didn't check in with God, she wouldn't have heard the timing for all this. And all this makes her story, packages her story in a beautiful, beautiful way. So I sit over here and I'm like, okay, who am I needing to notice? And if it's someone in my life that quote unquote is the enemy, you know, the last few days we talked about somebody having liars in their organization, somebody having people trying to steal people from their organization. We've had all these things, and we want to get frustrated by them. You know, somebody help us. What do we do with these people? What do we do with haters, or what I hate using that word. I hate using that word. I got to quit saying that. Hate. I don't like using that word. But what do we do with all these people? Well, in this story of Esther, it's interesting how she used them. She got close to them and kept them close to her. And it's that whole phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. She kept them close. She noticed them. And she kept them in her line of sight, and she kept them close to her. She served them. And I almost want to tell y'all the end of the story, but I really want y'all to go read it, because you need to read it for yourself. You'll get something else out of it. And because she kept them close, because she noticed them, they developed her story in a total different direction, and they gave her strength that she would have never had on her own. Think about it. Back in those days, women had no power, and she was the queen and could only do what the king told her and gave her. And because it's Queen Esther, it's the book of Esther, Michael, in the Old Testament, in the Bible. So I'll ask you again, who am I supposed to see that I'm not seeing in my life? And everybody needs to be noticed. And can I have eyes to see those God wants me to see, needs me to notice and help? And those are all four very different things, but it goes in line with network marketing if you think about it in building your business, because there's people you need to see and notice, there's people you need to serve, and there's people you need to help. And sometimes one person can encompass all four of those. But there's a reason there. So then it goes back, I dumb it down to where I can wrap my mind around it, and my mind goes, I need to see value in every person. Every single person. And when you do, the value doesn't mean they necessarily contribute positive to your life, but they might contribute something negative that will turn to a positive in your life. So I start looking at it like this, and this is what Sean's allowed me to do. Sean's helped me with my mind and my brain. And now anybody that comes into my life, whether they come at me in a negative or a positive, I get to step back and go, what do I get to gain here? Even for someone who is lying about me or lying around me or trying to take things from me or destroy me, what do I get to learn here? And it's going to be a good lesson, because when for lack of better words, when somebody pisses you off, you can't help but remember that lesson. But instead of it being a lesson that you stew on and you just get mad at, let it be a lesson that catapults you past this and into another area, so you can go lesson learned, so that pain doesn't have to continue. And you build on it. Am I making sense, or am I just woke up at 6:30 in the morning with my brain running? Ashley says that's huge. Sean,
Yes,
are you still
Megan.
with us?
I am. Makes sense.
Okay, your signal is like, yeah, your signal's kind of shoddy.
Okay.
So does that, since he's breaking up on my end, I don't know about y'all, but what kind of questions does this spur in your thoughts, in your mind? Is it helping you see some of your struggles and your story from a different perspective? Cool, Jeremiah.
So I think, I don't know if anybody's talking. Sorry, y'all. I'm at the gym.
You're good.
I think for me, what's important about this is start changing your perspective on how you view people. I think a lot of the times it comes to like, and I always talk to people about this, like being able to discern like because I think like every year when the new year starts, people are always like, cut somebody off or blah, 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 or like whoever did you wrong, whatever is like not supposed to be in your life in the following year. But I always feel like when you have that sort of attitude, it's reflected upon you, because why is it every year that you have to cut somebody off? It shouldn't necessarily have to be that. So what is it in you that's resulting in that action? And I think for me, it's understanding that everybody that you meet, you don't know how they're going to impact your life. So you have to have the same intention with everybody, regardless of who they are. Even somebody that like you meet on the street and you talk with for 5 minutes versus like somebody that you know that may be connected to somebody else that you know that think could possibly have more value, they may or may not end up being in your story long term. So for me, it's seeing that you have to be very intentional and transparent, essentially, in how you treat everybody. That there shouldn't be any sort of like, oh, okay, well, I think that they may be able to help me a little bit more, so I'll make sure to go above and beyond with this person. But with this person, I don't really know what they're doing right now, and I don't think it really aligns with what I need, so maybe I won't have to give as much effort.
You know, Ashley, that makes me think of another story that is similar to the Esther story, but this is a personal story that happened to me. I started a business back, I don't know, early 2000s. And I was working in this house. It was a 10,000 square foot house. And I did all this infant house proofing. So baby proofing a house, plugs, gates, doors, all these things. And I started this business. It was a franchise. And so I'm working in this house. It's a new build. It's amazing. Like I said, it's 10,000 square feet. It was an anesthesiologist in a town nearby. And I'm there and they're having an open house. Well, his wife is there and I've showed her all the bells and whistles of everything. And she picks up a broom and I'm dressed, you know, appropriately to handle that situation. And she's dressed casually. It's her house. She can do whatever she wants to. And she's sweeping the floor. And I told her, I said, you know, I'd be happy to do that for you. She's like, no, not at all. And she's sweeping the floor. And people begin to come in and it's an open house and they walk in and they walk to me and they begin to treat me like I own the house. And I'm like, I just do the baby proofing. And they're like, oh, well, we thought you were the owner of the house. And they just keep walking. Well, the owner of the house is standing right there holding a broom, working. But because she's doing that, no one addressed her. Not one person. And as everybody walked by, and I turned and I looked at her, I said, why didn't you say anything? She goes, if they won't speak to someone cleaning my house, I have no need to speak to them. And that sat with me, and it's similar to what you're saying. Who is it that we think we need to cut off because they don't have the appearance of what we think they need to contribute to our life? And we walk by the owner of a 10,000 square foot home who's got more resources than we could ever dream of. And we walk right past because they don't have the appearance. So it's curious that you brought that up, because you're basically saying, look in the mirror at yourself first before you start cutting people off, and realize there might be some people in my life that I think I need to cut off. And the only reason I think they need to cut off is because they disrupt my spirit enough to where I don't want to look at myself long enough to make the changes I need to be able to have them in my life. Again, everyone's valuable. Did we totally lose Sean, y'all?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. What you thinking? Because I heard you on that one. What you thinking?
Well, again, it's how many people do we not see because we're the right, but we're not looking. We're not opening ourselves up, right? Look at my journey over the last year or two, and getting a little bit closer to the good book in the Lord. Seen him, knew, but and how many people aren't always there that we need to remember? So, pretty amazing stuff. Incredible conversation. Brianna, I see you're raised.
Morning, guys. What I
Good
was
morning.
gonna say, I guess I have two thoughts. One just goes back to what Rhonda and the other young lady was saying. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, but basically, you know, it's the thing with the custodian and the owner, or the custodian and the CEO. You treat them with the same respect. You notice them both, and when you actually take the time to notice them both, they both have things to offer. You just have to give them that initial respect. And then what Rhonda was saying before reminded me of something that happened on this call. Well, not really on this call, but something I got from this call, I believe last month, because I don't like doing my hair. I have a coworker, right? And she has, her personality is a bit extra. When I say extra, I just mean bigger than normal people. Well, what's normal, right? But so her personality is a bit extra. Oh, can you guys see me? Hear me? Okay. And so at work, she tends to know everything. So she kind of like tends to let everybody else know that she knows everything. So at first I was like, girl, man, this girl is so annoying. And why does she keep telling me stuff? Like, why can't she just leave me do what I'm doing, you know? She doesn't have to tell me the same thing every day. But after being on these calls and realizing that, you know, everybody is not me. They don't have the same essence that I have. They don't have the same thought processes I have. They come from different backgrounds. And, you know, I really had to take a step back and within myself and say, well, you know what? She's like that for a reason. And maybe that's what I need right now. And so when I realized that, I went up to her and I told her, you know, although you can be a bit much for me, I just want to say thank you for being you, because if you weren't you, I couldn't be me today. And you know, before she always thought there was tension between us because I was kind of annoyed with who she was. And after that, everything kind of like smoothed out. She was like, thank you, I appreciate that. You know, she gave me a hug and I was like, okay, this is a start to something better, something new. And, you know, she helped me build tolerance because I'm not the most patient person. So she's helping me build tolerance, she's helping me build patience, and she's helping me to take a step back, especially in like the food and beverage profession, waitressing or whatever. You get people that come up to you all the time and you think they're asking stupid questions, but the fact is they really don't know. So she's helping me to take a step back and even apply that patience and that tolerance. I don't want to say tolerant, but that's the only thing I could come up with right now. That tolerance to deal with customers and her and just everybody in general. So that's what I wanted to say.
What a great perspective. And everybody makes us who we are. People who make us smile, that's real mad, make us who we are. People who make us indifferent, make us who we are. So all of these, they just make That's a nice statement, one to be aware of. Old story makes us very cool.
Yeah.
RBP, mic's on. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's not necessarily the word tolerance that you need, because tolerance to me sometimes denotes I'm just going to keep dealing with it the same way. I'm just going to handle it and sit through it. I think it creates in you some perseverance to where you're going to continue, but you're going to move forward while you do.
Right.
And when you say it that way, y'all know me, I'm real big on the power of your words. When you say it that way, it totally changes how you see her now. And you don't have to tolerate her. You persevere through what it is she's bringing into your life. And you, with perseverance, you can look at her as valuable.
Right.
Because she's going to bring that value that you need to keep walking with. And then you'll gain what it is you need. And then you'll be able to look at her through eyes of a student and go, thanks for helping me learn perseverance. That was huge. And one day it'll come in even more handy.
Right. So now that we're on a better page, like I know she knows everything. So instead of her, pushing it down my throat, I can be like, hey, hey, Lily, like, what do you know about this? And she can just tell me her stuff, and she can feel good about telling me and helping me with something. And I can feel good about asking her the question because I didn't know the answer.
Yes, and you can get good with learning how to handle and deal with people with her same personality.
Right.
Because she won't be the only one in your life. And then you'll be able to go, no, I already learned this lesson. So learn that lesson quickly so it doesn't keep coming back to you.
Amen.
Yeah, that's cool. Were there any other questions in the comments? I know, Sean, do you have something else?
Hello?
Oh, I know Brandon his hand.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going? Really, really appreciate these calls. What I was gonna say, I was gonna add to what Bree was saying. It's pretty funny because like I got on these calls in the past, and I talked about my coworkers and how some of them can be a little different. And so this call was really amazing because it's allowed me to see that even though they don't have the same energy that you necessarily want, it allowed me to like want to keep my distance and continue to build and work on myself. But speaking to Rhonda and being on these calls and different things like that, this call allowed me to realize that it's more so what you can learn from them in terms of, because just like Esther, if Esther had fear, she wouldn't have dealt with the king and the other gentleman. I forget the name, but the king and the guy that hated the Jews. And so, but she stepped out of her comfort zone, and she actually like started to be more aware. And so just the simple fact of being more aware is something that I definitely can take in terms of, like Rhonda just said, if I keep acting out of fear of somebody, me becoming like them, then I won't be able to become who God has me to be. And so that's pretty much what I definitely can get out of that. And Bree, she kind of confirmed that as well, because if she didn't want anything to do with that coworker, she would have just been in that same situation dealing with what she's dealing with every single day. And so and Esther, I'm definitely gonna have to read that because me and Rhonda, we talk a lot, and Esther is actually my grandmother's name. But yeah, so I'm definitely gonna have to read this book. So, thank you.
That's that praying grandma of yours coming through today on this phone call, Brandon.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely got to read it.
Well, so there's some homework, some success work. Go check that out. Because you're a little, I forgot to ask you all, send out your 3 messages. Hopefully I got a couple of messages also. Make sure that you go send out your messages, go recognize people that need to be recognized. Funny how the conversation. And here's the of this that's just in my head. Be recognizable. Be somebody to own the house who was doing the broom. She was right there in plain sight. But be visible. Have your energy with a lot of light on. Don't be under a basket, as they talk about. Be that soul that people can read, can look, right? So there you go. That's my conversation. Rhonda, anything to wrap it up?
Sorry, I was trying to get back to my notes. A couple of y'all asked for other questions and notes on there. I put my number in there. I'm on WhatsApp. If you want me to take a shot of my notes, I can, or I can, write them up for you. I'm happy to do that. What I would say is if you're going to look at these notes, I would just encourage you to go read that book. It's like a literary masterpiece. And it would be curious. I would love to hear some of y'all's takes on what you get out of the book of Esther, because it's pretty freaking powerful. And to think, you ladies, think about this. Back in the day when this book was written, women had no power, nothing. They were thought of as usable and expendable. And is that a word? Expendable? I don't know. Expendable.
Yes.
Expendable.
Yeah.
It is a word? Okay. It's a word now. It's an East Texas word. Women had nothing. And a whole freaking book was written about her. And put in the Bible. What? So, but here's what's funny. Guys, it's not for just women. You're going to see some really interesting twists in here. And you're going to identify some really interesting things in your life. Whether you look at yourself as the king, as Mordecai, as Haman, or even what you could learn in being in Esther's position. And then there's all these other supporting characters that you're going to be like, wow. So I would be curious, because of the level of minds we have on this call, I would be curious to see what y'all come up with for thoughts and questions, because I know for me, it's going to make my brain like go bananas happy. And I've got another 2 weeks of this Bible study with my life group. And I would love to be able to walk in there and go, let me tell you, hang on a second. I've got thoughts and questions from my peoples, and we need some answers. And then I could tell y'all some other, because I've got some really amazing people I'm in Bible study with in that Bible study. So, and listen, this was a full moment. Sean, I think, felt that. That's why he called on me, because today I usually do a Bible study, and I don't get to teach my Bible study today, because you can teach all you want, but until you get your feet out there on the pavement and where the rubber meets the road, to me, you're just teaching. So I've canceled our Bible study, and we're going to go serve one of the ladies in our Bible study that's going through a horrific divorce and is having to move out of her house. I've got this group of women going over to serve this woman to help her get out of her situation and into a better one. So I don't get to teach my Bible study, but I get to go put into practice what I'm learning, y'all. I'm going to go notice some people, and I'm going to go love on some people, and I'm going to go learn from some people as we go through this move. So thank you for letting me have this moment. Thank you for the support you put in the chat. I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm going to get there. I'll be all right. And if y'all need anything, I put my number in the chat. Text me. I'm on WhatsApp, whatever. Sean, you're amazing for letting me have this moment. You can hear it in my voice, and you can hear it in my heart. I know you can. So I still think it's wrong you're traveling without me, but whatever, you know, I love you. I love y'all.
There you go, folks. Have an amazing day. Somebody who is standing there with a broom, go notice somebody who just needs to be loved, and it'll make your day a little bit better, and you'll save something you didn't know you could save. I appreciate you all. I'm Sean Murphy, founder of Enter Profits. I'll see y'all where? At the next event. See you from Costa Rica. Y'all love to each other.
Love y'all. Have a great day.
Good day. Have a good day.
Wonderful day,
Love y'all.
everyone.
Have a safe
Have a great
flight.
day.
Love you, my Misfit family. Everybody have a blessed
Love you
day.
guys.
Safe travels, Sean.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.